All right, here we go. What is up, everybody? Welcome into the show. You're watching the San Francisco 49ers Report. Chase Sr. here with you. Coming up here on today's program, I'm going to put together my perfect 49ers offseason plan, what I think San Francisco should do in order to get back to the Super Bowl, the moves that the Niners need to make in order to get back into championship contention. What they did in 2025, very impressive, considering everything that they had to deal with. The injuries, the adversity, having to usher in a new era of a lot of young defensive players. But this is a monster offseason coming up for San Francisco. And throughout today's 49ers report, I'm going to give you all of my steps for what San Francisco must do in order to get that 6th Lombardi trophy. But don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Given that this is a massive offseason coming up for the Niners, we're going to break down the latest news, rumors, and reports right here on the show. I have you covered every step of the way when it comes to NFL free agency. We'll be in Indianapolis again for the NFL Combine, so our NFL draft content is going to be fantastic. Anytime there's trade buzz around the Niners, we'll break that down as well. And the proof is in the pudding here, ladies and gentlemen. What we do is very unique. I believe what we do is very special. I think that what we do caters to the faithful, and we put a lot of work into our content here. That's why we're closing in on 200,000 subscribers. So if you love the Niners and you want Niners coverage every single day year round, lock us in, hit that sub button, and join the movement right now. Step number 1 of my perfect offseason plan for the Niners. This is something that has been lingering for a decade plus. It's something that is impacting the Niners' multi-million-dollar business. Jed York, I'm talking to you. Your organization is worth nearly $9 billion. John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, I'm talking to you as well. The 49ers this offseason have to get healthy, and they have to figure out their injury woes and why they've been so banged up so often, really going all the way back to 2013, 2014, even before Kyle Shanahan became head coach in 2017. Let's take a look at some of the numbers here. Since Levi Stadium opened up in 2014, the Niners have the most games lost due to injury among the 32 teams in the National Football League. Since 2017, the Niners have been top 10 in injury rate every year except for 2023. They were healthy for 1 year, and they made it to the Super Bowl and should have won, but lost that game in overtime. Since 2017, the Niners have had more than 2,000 games lost due to injuries. That is number 1 in the NFL. And there is a really interesting statistic that breaks all of this down further. Adjusted games lost. And here is where the Niners rank among the 32 teams in the NFL. In 2024, the most games lost. In 2023, that healthy season. In 2022, 24th. 2021, 29th. 2020, dead last in the NFL again. 2019, 27th. 2018, 26th. 2017, 22nd. 2016, 24th. 2015, 27th. 2014, 28th. 2013, 23rd. That is not where you want to be. So translation here, the Niners have been top 10 in adjusted games lost in 10 of the last 12 seasons. This isn't a recent problem. This is a problem that has been impacting this organization for a really long time. From 2013 through 2025, there have been 4 different coaching staffs. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan since 2017 alongside John Lynch. There have been some changes made to the training staffs for San Francisco. During this time period, 2 different training staffs during this time frame. So what the Niners must look at, their head athletic trainer, Dustin Little, their strength and conditioning staff, their practice regimen, how they recover, how they stretch, and yes, the electrical substation. I'm not going to call this a conspiracy theory because it doesn't fit that definition. That would be lazy to call it that. I'm just going to call it a theory. And John Lynch said yesterday, the Niners have and will continue to look into the fact that that electrical substation is right next to the Niners practice facility where they spent a lot of their time, and it hovers over where they practice as far as their practice field. The Niners are going to look into whether or not there is a study that can be done to determine whether or not the electrical substation and the electromagnetic fields are impacting the Niners' health and causing some of these injuries. Now, let's clear up some information here. A lot of people who have gone against this theory have said, well, Chase, the Niners have practiced here since the 1980s. They didn't have injury issues then. Yes, that is true. But this substation, which has also been there since the 1980s, expanded in 2014 when the Niners erected Levi Stadium, thus increasing the power, thus potentially increasing the output of the EMFs. This isn't the only reason why I believe the Niners have been hurt. There are likely many reasons behind these injury problems. I just listed all of them. But this is something that is worth looking at. It's worth studying. Players have gotten wind of this. They talk about it. And if players are concerned about this, and if free agents don't want to come to the Niners because of this, on top of just the regular injury problems, the Niners have a problem at their hands. And it's up to Jed York potentially to move the practice field if he needs to. I'm glad the Niners are looking into this. This is the one thing that the Niners need to solve as soon as possible. Get healthy and figure out the problematic injury history for this organization. Offseason plan, step number 2. The 49ers this offseason must improve the offensive line. This is a Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch team-building philosophical problem because they have said themselves they would rather get players who score touchdowns in the early rounds compared to offensive linemen. And that has to change. Kyle also has to stop thinking that his scheme can cover up for a bad offensive line. Kyle Shanahan is a great play caller. He's a great play designer. But everything ends there if you can't run block and you can't pass protect. And if you continue to get bullied, bulldozed, and manhandled in the trenches, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. That divisional round game against the Seattle Seahawks has to be a wake-up call for the Niners. San Francisco up front against that Seahawks defensive line got their teeth kicked in the trenches. You know, it was really problematic as well. Why didn't Kyle Shanahan run any quarterback sneaks when, since coming into the league, Brock Purdy has been one of the most efficient quarterback sneakers? Why didn't the Niners run up the middle in some of those short yardage situations? Even Kyle Shanahan, who last week called Jake Brendel one of the top centers in the NFL, did not have confidence in his interior offensive line winning against that Seahawks front. And the last 2 seasons, the 49ers really have not been a good running team. And yes, Christian McCaffrey didn't play barely at all in 2024. He did play a lot in 2025. Whoever has run the football, the running numbers and rushing statistics for the Niners have not been what they're capable of being and what they've been in the past. And think about it from this standpoint as well, that the Niners just invested in Brock Purdy. You were paying him $55 million per year. That contract's going to set in here soon. You have to keep your prized possession healthy. And against Seattle, he ran for more than 400 yards behind the line of scrimmage because he was running for his life. The Seahawks barely blitzed, yet they still got home nearly 50% of the time. And what's so frustrating about this, because I've been discussing this since 2021, can you imagine how dominant the Niners could be if they had an imposing offensive line? One of the reasons why I can't wait to see Mike McDaniel, coming from the Kyle Shanahan tree, coach as the OC under Jim Harbaugh, it's how they're going to marry their offensive philosophies. John Harbaugh wants to run the football. Jim Harbaugh, wants to run the football. John does as well. Mike McDaniel wants to run the football. But in this Kyle Shanahan system, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, they haven't always valued the offensive line. Harbaugh does value the offensive line. He has said that he'd rather build an offensive line compared to getting skilled players because he looks at offensive linemen like skill players because they open things up for skill players. So you're going to have Jim Harbaugh with his offensive line philosophy and the scheme of Kyle Shanahan. And if that marries up and it leads to a lot of success for the Los Angeles Chargers, they could be a dynamite offense. What the Niners should do to address the offensive line, sign Tyler Linderbaum this offseason. I really liked him in the pre-draft process coming out of Iowa. I liked him for San Francisco a few years ago. And Linderbaum in 2025, one of the top centers in the game. Overall PFF grade of 80.2, fifth among 40 centers. A run blocking grade of 83.7, fourth. Pass blocking grade 63.7, 22nd. Gave up 2 sacks, 1 quarterback hit, and 26 pressures. The Niners in the past, contrary to belief, have invested in the center spot. Weston Richburg, then his career was cut short. Alex Mack, they need to get back to that. And then you look elsewhere along the offensive line. Trent Williams is going to be 38 years old next July. Yet to find his replacement at some point. So here are the top offensive tackle prospects. I'm very early in my evaluations of some of these prospects, so I'm going to get these pronunciations right and correct as we get closer to the draft. So I'm going to try my best right now. I'm just new to the draft process right now because the Niner season just ended last weekend. Francis Muaga of Miami, Spencer Fano, Utah, Caleb Lemieux, Utah, Monroe Freeling out of Georgia, Caden Proctor out of Alabama. Those are the top 5 offensive tackle prospects right now, very early in the pre-draft. And in fact, I might like Caden Proctor among all of them, and that player could be available for the Niners when they draft. Top offensive guard prospects. Vega Giovanni out of Penn State. He's a dog. He can move a pile. Keelan Rutledge out of Georgia Tech. Emmanuel Pregnan out of Oregon. Chase Besantis, Texas A&M. DJ Campbell coming out of Texas. The top center prospects. Logan Jones, Iowa. They developed so many offensive linemen. Connor Liu, Auburn. Trey Zune, Texas A&M. Jake Slaughter, Florida. And Parker Brailsford out of Alabama. Niners have to look at all of those top offensive line prospects. Step number 3, the Niners must get faster and more explosive on the offensive side of the football. Kyle Shanahan even admitted on Wednesday during his end of the season press conference that, yeah, the Niners need to get faster on the offensive side of the ball, and that really stood out in that Seahawks game. The Seahawks were able to defend the Niners, sticking to their skill position players like Velcro, because the Niners did not threaten Seattle one iota. So I think the Niners should go after Alec Pearson free agency. He'd be a great scheme fit for the Niners. He's tall, he's big, he's physical, he runs fast, he has good hands, led the NFL in yards per catch this past year. He's a willing blocker, and I think his best football is ahead of him. Look at these numbers in 2025. 47 catches, more than 1,000 yards, 21.3 yards per catch. You want somebody who can make plays downfield but also go up and get it and put a threat into that Seahawks defense with his speed and physicality? It's Alec Pierce, 6 touchdowns, 1 drop. He was awesome against the Niners in primetime a few weeks ago. In 2024, 37 catches, 824 yards, 22.3 yards per catch, 7 touchdowns, 3 drops. He's really started to come into his own, but his entire Colts career, it's not like he's had a stabilizer at the quarterback spot. If he has Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan, I think this could be an excellent signing, and it's a player who's not going to straight up break the bank to a crazy level in free agency. A great plan here for the Niners. Sign a free agent wide receiver like Alec Pierce, like a Rashid Shaheed, who's not a 1, but he'd be a 2 or a 3, and he has blazing speed. He's electrifying. And also draft a wide receiver early in the draft. That's how you can rebuild that wide receiver room very quickly. When is George Kittle going to come back next year? His Achilles tear was up top near the soleus. That's good. It's not going to lead to as long of a recovery. But if I'm the Niners, I would look long and hard at Kyle Pitts. Now, in this case, you'd probably let Jawan Jennings go. That's fine. He'd demand $15 to $20 million. And yes, Kyle Pitts plays a different position technically than Jawan Jennings, but he's faster than JJ. So when George Kittle is on the field, that's your blocking tight end. But you can also utilize Kyle Pitts as that second tight end and glorified wide receiver. This guy is still young, And he is an electric playmaker as well when he's engaged. And in this Kyle Shanahan system, given how Brock Purdy throws with such great timing, touch, and accuracy, I think Pitts could ball out for the Niners. Wide receiver trade targets here for San Francisco. A.J. Brown could be on the block. I'd make a call to the Vikings on Justin Jefferson. Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jags. He was unhappy all this past year. Garrett Wilson of the Jets. The Jets are going to be awful. If you want to talk about a slick route runner who's produced with awful quarterback play, who is very underrated because he plays for the Jets, that's Garrett Wilson. Fantastic player. Top wide receiver prospects going into the 2026 NFL Draft. Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. Carnell Tate, Ohio State. Mekhi Lemon, USC. Kind of like a JSN out of the slot. Denzel Boston, Washington. And then a player who is looked at as a guy who can pick up a lot of yak for Kyle Shanahan's scheme, Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M. More to get to here on the show, but I do want to propose today's poll question. It's also the pinned comment of today's 49ers report. What is one move that the 49ers must make? Join the conversation right now down below in the comments section. I encourage you to join that conversation because I always want to hear from you right here on the San Francisco 49ers report. Just show me that you know ball. Let's get to our sponsor. Today's 49ers report is brought to you by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app in the game. Join the millions of users. Sign up today. The big game is almost here. There's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than with Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next year. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Find your community on Prize Picks with the new social feeds feature. You can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tail or fade our picks with just one click. New feature alert. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out of those winnings before the game even finishes. 4-pick power play for championship weekend. Broncos, Patriots, Seahawks, Rams. Cortland Sutton, Stephon Diggs, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. Kenneth Walker, Puka Nacua, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. What I would love for the 49ers to do, hire Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator. He is the best option out there now that Brian Flores is going back to the Minnesota Vikings. What I think the Niners will do, unfortunately, is promote Gus Bradley from assistant head coach of the defense up to defensive coordinator. Very tight with Robert Saleh with the Niners this past year. He handled red zone duties. But Jim Schwartz is a better DC, and there is a long, long track record of success. Kyle Shanahan started to notice Jim Schwartz when he was the DC of the Tennessee Titans. That's when Kyle Shanahan realized, whenever I'm a head coach, I want to run the wide nine. With the Titans, 2001 to 2008, his units frequently ranked among the league's elite in total defense, rushing defense, and takeaways. Then he went to the Philadelphia Eagles. With the Eagles, from 2016 to 2020, remember he was the head coach of the Detroit Lions there for a bit, he transformed a bottom-tier defense, 30th in yards allowed in 2015, into a top performer. Notable rankings including #1 in rush defense in 2017, top 10 in total yards multiple years, top rankings in the red zone, third down, and scoring defense, and the Eagles won a Super Bowl in 2017, year 2 that he was the DC. Jim Schwartz with the Browns, 2023 to now. Browns might elevate him to head coach as well. That's something to look out for. Led the NFL's stingiest defense in total yards allowed over his first 3 seasons, averaging under 300 yards per game given up. NFL's best. Produced high sack totals, 49 in 2023, 53 in 2025. Helped Myles Garrett set the NFL single-season sack record with 23 in 2025. Can you imagine what Jim Schwartz can do with Nick Bosa? Nick Bosa would be dominant. Lastly, the needs on defense for the Niners and for this new defensive coordinator. The Niners need to continue to bulk up their pass rush. They were dead last in sacks last year. That's at defensive end and at defensive tackle. I like Nick Bosa, Michael Williams, CJ West, Alfred Collins. Outside of that, I don't want to see a Jordan Elliott on this team next year. I don't need to see a Kevin Givens. Get better and more dynamic. You add Bryce Huff to the mix, of course, too. He's a good speed rusher. But getting a pass rush and generating that isn't just at defensive end. It's at defensive tackle as well. That's why I put defensive line. Cornerback, I think, is a big need for the Niners. And can we please get a decent safety on the back end for this Niners football team? Because in coverage, Jair Brown, Jason Pinnock, Malik Mustafa, they were liabilities. And it did hurt this Niners defense in 2025. So that is my perfect offseason plan for the Niners. I want you to grade it for me right now down in the comments section. How do you think I did? A, B, C, D, or F? Once again, sound off with what you think. 340 people watching live right now. Thanks for being here. We just did segment number 1, the Niners' perfect offseason plan. In segment number 3, if we get enough questions, we'll do a mailbag. So use the hashtag 49ers or send in a super chat if you want to be a part of our mailbag. That's hashtag 49ers or send in a super chat if you want to get your questions answered for our mailbag. Segment number 2, the Niners made a bunch of roster moves and signings, and we're going to talk about those coming up here in just a moment, signing these players to futures deals. Tommy Huxley, $2 super chat. Givens and Elliott are useless as a butt on an elbow. Exactly. What does a butt on an elbow do for you? What do Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott do for you? Really not that much. So Tommy Huxley, we'll pop that super chat up. And I appreciate you sending in that deuce. Hope all is well, my man. I hope you're ripping that guitar like in the profile picture right there. Pamela Prince, let's get Fred, Bosa, Kittle healthy, be back on the field. I think with Warner, Bosa, Michael back next year, that's immediately going to help out this defense a lot. And then outside of that, you just have to round out the unit. The 49er guy. Hire Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator. I agree. The only Hemingway with a $2 super chat as well. Thank you for that. Always appreciate the donations. Pamela, Chase gets an A+ from me. Thank you, Pamela. Appreciate that, Pamela. We'll take it. Spunky guy. Good day, Chip and Chase. What's up, Spunky? Here's that super chat from Tommy. And then the only Hemingway. We'll get that popped up here in just a moment as well. Cannon. What's up, Cannon? One of our super chat MVPs last week for sure. Could we possibly bring in Malik Willis as Brock Purdy's backup? Of course, that would mean that they trade away Mac Jones. I think Malik Willis might get a starting opportunity this year. I actually do. Played really well the last 2 years in spot duty with the Green Bay Packers. All right, coming up next, Niners roster moves. San Francisco adding a bunch of new players to the roster. Oh, Jesse Minter to the Baltimore Ravens. Felt like that was going to happen. Used to coach there. Has the Harbaugh ties. Was a defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. And he's going to take a really good offensive coordinator with him so that OC can call plays for Lamar Jackson. That's breaking news that happened just moments ago. Ian Rappaport saying, Joe Brady, Cliff Kingsbury, if they don't land head coaching jobs, could be in play for OC with the Baltimore Ravens. All right, let's move forward here on the show. We're talking all things NFL and Niners here on the program. Niners roster moves. Let's get into it. This is the San Francisco 49ers Report. Chase Sr. here with you. And as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. Coming up, the Niners have signed 15 players to futures deals to get the offseason jump started. The Niners wasting no time in the aftermath of that playoff loss to the Seattle Seahawks. You had Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch holding their end of the season press conference on Wednesday, and the Niners also making moves to fulfill and fill out that 90-man roster. So let's go player for player here. And there's some intriguing names on this list, including the Hulk, who a lot of Niner fans really like. First, Niners signing offensive lineman Isaac Alarcon. They're bringing him back. Pretty crazy story here. Growing up in Mexico, he started playing football at 14 years old. He made it to the NFL with the Dallas Cowboys as part of the International Pathway Program. You might remember that to start 2025, he was never going to make the 53-man roster, but he was suspended the first 6 games of the year due to a PED suspension. Niners also adding Evan Anderson to a futures deal, the defensive tackle who the Niners signed out of Florida Atlantic following the 2024 NFL Draft. He played in 12 games last year in 2024 as a rookie, did not appear in a game for the Niners in 2025, but was on the practice squad. If you remember, we saw some flashes from Evan Anderson in his first year as a UDFA, including that really big stop in the red zone against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which helped the Niners win that game. He just shot right through the interior of that Buccaneers offensive line and made a run stop. I think there's some potential here for Evan Anderson as a depth piece along the interior Niners defensive line. Eli Apple going to stay with the Niners as well. San Francisco had signed him several months ago when they were dealing with all of those injuries at the cornerback spot. Does have draft pedigree. Veteran first-round pick from the 2016 NFL Draft by the New York Giants. 6 picks, 61 pass breakups in his career. He's played with several teams, and he's highly experienced. The Niners primarily used him as a special teamer. Junior Bergen, the 7th-round pick from the 2025 NFL Draft, also going to stay with the Niners. Brant Boyer, the Niners special teams coordinator, really took a liking to him because he played his college football at Montana. Brant Boyer's son also played there. And Junior Bergen, in college at the FCS level, one of the best returners in the history of D1AA. Tied for the most punt return touchdowns in FCS history. Now, he wasn't great in the preseason, didn't really do much in training camp. He needs to develop as a wide receiver. He wasn't ready for the NFL level. It's a big reason why the Niners made that move for Sky Moore, and Sky Moore this year ended up being a very dynamic returner in the punt game and kickoff game for San Francisco. So Junior Bergen does have his work cut out for him if the Niners want to move forward with Sky Moore. San Francisco also signing defensive end William Bradley King. Spent some time with the Niners practice squad this season. 7th-round pick in 2021 by the Washington Commanders out of Baylor. He is a veteran edge rusher, a player who turned some heads throughout training camp and during last summer was the UDFA defensive back Derek Canteen. He made a lot of plays on the football last summer, and some people thought that he could be a sneaky player to potentially make the Niners 53-man roster. UDFA out of Cincinnati, 9 interceptions and 32 pass breakups in college. Had a lot of ball production there, and again, a really good training camp for him. More roster moves to get to for San Francisco, but I do want to get to our sponsor. Today's 49ers Report is brought to you by Bubs Naturals. I love their collagen peptides. It's a part of my daily routine. I put a scoop of Bubs into my coffee. I love the protein content, but all of the health benefits that collagen and Bubs offers me. And in 2026, I want to continue my normal healthy routine. And I'm helping my body turn back the clock. You might not know this, but the things that happen to our bodies as we get older, stiff joints in the morning, longer recovery in the gym, hair thinning, nails breaking, even skin losing that smooth glow, these things can all be fixed. These things happen in the first place because our body's collagen levels start to naturally decline beginning as early as our mid-20s. Collagen is also referred to as the glue that holds our bodies together. So you can imagine that a decline in collagen production as you age has some big impacts on your body. That's where Bubs Naturals collagen peptides come in. Bubs helps to restore collagen levels closer to what your body naturally had in its youth, so your joints feel stronger, your hair and nails grow healthier, and your skin looks smoother. Since I started taking Bubs, I've just felt awesome, and I feel young, man. I feel spry. I'm recovering from my hard gym sessions a lot quicker. And what I also like, no junk, zero sugar, sweeteners, or fillers, third-party tested, NSF certified for sport, Whole30 approved, so you know it's clean and trustworthy. Sustainably sourced from grass-fed pasture-raised cattle. It also mixes seamlessly. You can dissolve it in your coffee, water, or smoothies without taste or clumps. Over 100,000 happy customers, voted 2024's best collagen by Health.com. So here you go. Live better longer. For a limited time only, our listeners, our viewers, getting 20% off at Bubs Naturals by using our code CHAT at checkout. Just head to BUBSNaturals.com, use the code CHAT, and you're all set. After you make your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that the San Francisco 49ers Report sent you. The Niners also signing edge rusher Andrew Farmer to a futures contract. UDFA out of D2 Lane College, 3 tackles in 8 games throughout his career. His length and athleticism is something really special at the D2 level. Yes, it was Division II. He had great sack production. Another developmental piece here for San Francisco, who spent some time with Denver. The Niners recently signed Derek Forrest going into the Seahawks divisional round game because Jair Brown missed that game with that hamstring injury. Derek Forrest is a well-accomplished player. 5th-round pick by the Commanders in 2021 out of Cincinnati. He played in that same secondary alongside Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant. Sauce now with the Colts, Kobe Bryant with the Seahawks. That defensive backfield was loaded. And Derek Forrest in his career has started like 17 games with 40-plus games played. So this is a veteran with a lot of starting experience. What do the Niners have an issue at? The safety spot. The Niners also bringing back Jalen Graham, 7th-round pick by the Niners out of Purdue a few years ago. More of a special teams player. When the Niners were so banged up at that linebacker spot, they did have to elevate him to the active game day roster. He saw some snaps at off-ball linebacker, but is better as a special teams player. Adrian Martinez signing a futures deal too, a star quarterback at Nebraska and Kansas State, a true dual-threat quarterback. He was the Niners' backup quarterback when Brock Purdy was hurt. And under Kyle Shanahan, I'm always interested to see what quarterbacks they tried to develop. Adrian Martinez is one of those guys. I really liked center and interior offensive lineman Drake Nugent as a UDFA following the 2024 NFL Draft. Started his college career at Stanford, transferred to Michigan to play under Jim Harbaugh. He was the starting center for that national championship team. He's shown some nice things throughout the preseason. I think the Niners need to upgrade at center, and I don't think Drake Nugent is the guy they want to upgrade with. Could he develop, though, into a good backup? The Niners signing offensive lineman Brandon Parker hasn't really worked out for him in his career. A bad pick by the Las Vegas Raiders in 2018 out of North Carolina A&T. He was a 3rd-round pick. He was looked at as a gem by the Raiders at the time, but he does have a lot of experience, and this Niners offensive line isn't great. 59 games with 33 starts. The Niners bringing back Malik Turner as well. UDFA out of Illinois in 2018. Played his college football at Sacred Heart Griffin in Springfield, Illinois under legendary coach Ken Leonard. A journeyman wide receiver, more of a special teamer. What's so crazy is that the Niners were so hurt at wide receiver in that wild card game against the Eagles that Malik Turner on that game-winning drive for Brock Purdy was getting snaps on that final drive. Perhaps the biggest acquisition among these roster moves for San Francisco is this one. The Niners signing Sebastian Valdez to a futures contract. UDFA out of Washington, nicknamed the Hulk, impressed throughout training camp and in the preseason. Violent hands, very physical, smaller for a defensive tackle, but he wins with quickness. He performs so well for the practice squad and for the scout team that the Niners on multiple cases this year elevated him to the game day roster. He didn't end up playing, but they did that as a reward to him playing so well and being such an important member for the scout team and practice squad. Zachary Thomas being added to this list as well, the offensive lineman who is a 6th-round pick by the Chicago Bears in 2022. He spent time with Chicago, the Los Angeles Rams, Sean McVay fit, the New England Patriots, Houston Texans, and Indianapolis Colts. So those are the moves that the Niners have made for futures contracts. What they have to do, fill out that 90-man roster to see who they want to be a part of this team throughout training camp and in the preseason. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Anytime the Niners make moves, we always have you covered with great insight. All right, Cameron Dotson, $2 super chat. Mac Jones and a third to Arizona for Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan is a player who I really liked in the pre-draft process last year. He did not play to start the year because he was hurt. I believe it was a foot or ankle injury. He came back. He played a few games. He was dominant. He looked to be a stud. Then he tore his Achilles. So it's a player who was the number 1 overall high school recruit when he was coming out of high school. Went to Ole Miss, a little bit up and down, but is a player with so much ability. But did the Niners trade Mac and a third to Arizona for Walter Nolan coming off that torn Achilles? That's a lot of risk right there, especially with all of the Niners injury problems. Callum, $8, I believe, in Australian currency. If the Niners trade Mac, could Curtis Rourke be the backup for the Niners? I think that would be the plan. And the Niners opened up his practice window for Curtis Rourke. They never activated him to the 53-man roster, and that was strategical. They didn't need to, but I think they wanted to get a look at how Curtis Rourke looked practicing to see what he can become. And look, he played his college football last year at Indiana under Curt Cignetti. Curt Cignetti wanted to bring Curtis Rourke in. He was in a transfer, from Ohio. Big-bodied pocket quarterback who can throw with some pretty good touch. Sometimes his processing is a little bit off, but has a really solid arm and is looked at as a pretty good scheme fit for head coach Kyle Shanahan. Callum, thank you for that. And yes, if the Niners trade away Mac Jones, I think Curtis Rourke could be in play to be the backup for the Niners. All right, Chip, how are we doing on questions here? Do we have enough for a mailbag? Awesome. Segment number 3 will be a mailbag. Last call on that. If you want to get some questions in, use the hashtag 49ers. Send in a super chat. If you send in a super chat, you are guaranteed to be featured here on the show. And in our mailbag, I can expand on those super chats that you do send in, of course. So mailbag coming up, segment number 3. That's how we're going to round out the program here. Perfect offseason plan was segment number 1. Niners making some roster moves, segment number 2. Mailbag coming up, segment number 3. All right. Niners Report mailbag coming up right now. Let's get into it. We're going to open up the floor for a mailbag right here on the San Francisco 49ers Report. I always love taking all of your questions, talking all things Niners with the faithful. And thanks to all of our loyal subscribers and everybody who continues to watch this show for getting those questions in. And even if you're not vocal, you don't get those questions in, thanks for being a real one and supporting the program here. Callum gets us started with an $8 super chat. I believe this is Australian currency right here. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Oi, oi, oi. We love our Aussies here on the show, and there are a lot of Niner fans who live down under. If the Niners trade Mac Jones, could Curtis Rourke be the backup quarterback for the Niners in 2026? I think this is a scenario that could become a reality for San Francisco. I know that Kyle Shanahan said on Wednesday, it's hard to envision us not having Mac Jones in 2026. And I think that is a smart move for San Francisco if they bring Mac Jones back for this upcoming season. The best security that you can have in football is quarterback security. And Mac Jones proved that to be true this past year. The Niners do not make it to the playoffs without Mac Jones. The Niners would not have won 12 games without Mac Jones. Brock Purdy missed a lot of time, almost half the season. He missed 8 games. What did Mac Jones do? He came in, he went 5-3, and he led the Niners to some pretty epic victories. Week 3 against Arizona, game-winning drive. The upset is 8.5-point underdogs on Thursday night on the road against the Los Angeles Rams, in which he threw for almost 4 bills. Mac Jones was awesome for the Niners. He resurrected his career. He revived his career. The Patriots and Jags, they didn't want him any longer. They left him for dead. Some people were talking bad on his name. He's rehabbed his image. And I think Mac proved in 2025, he's a legitimate starting quarterback in this league. Big-bodied quarterback who was a great fit for Kyle Shanahan's scheme. You saw why Shanahan really liked him in the pre-draft in 2021 coming out of Alabama, where he had one of the best years of any college football quarterback ever. Throws with good accuracy, timing, touch. He's able to process very quickly. He played point guard in this scheme. He won 5 games. George Kittle missed a lot of time. Kendrick Bourne at times was his number 1 wideout. He didn't get to throw to Ricky Pearsall all that much. The run game pretty much non-existent. The offensive line not great. The defense not good either. So he was able to rise up above all of that. So if the Niners bring him back next year, it's a smart move. But it's a very thin quarterback draft class for the 2026 draft. Dante Moore going back to Oregon. Fernando Mendoza is the top quarterback in this class. Let me ask you, who's number 2? Lenora Sellers, back to school. So the number 2 quarterback might be Ty Simpson, who's got some red flags, and I thought he should have gone back to school too. So when the quarterback class is thinner, and there are a lot of teams who are looking for a quarterback, what does it do? It drives up the asking price and the value of Mac Jones. So while Kyle Shanahan said, yeah, I think we're going to have him back in 2026, I'd be surprised if he wasn't on this team. If the Niners are blown away by a trade and they want to continue to build this team because they're lacking depth and overall talent and they have some needs on the roster, they'll need to trade Mac Jones. And yes, in that case, Curtis Rourke could be the backup. Kurt Cignetti, who everybody is fawning over, rightfully so, and raving about, who just won a natty at Indiana, brought Curtis Rourke to Indiana. And I believe in Cignetti's talent evaluation. He looked at Curtis Rourke from Indiana. Previously, he was at Ohio, and he said, I want that to be my quarterback. And Indiana last year made it to the college football playoff. Curtis Rourke is a big-bodied quarterback who I think is a good fit for Kyle Shanahan's system. Doesn't run around all that well, but throws with good touch. He can layer throws. He has a good pocket feel and a good developmental player for the Niners. So we'll see what the Niners do. They could also draft a quarterback if they trade away Mac Jones, but they opened up that practice window for Curtis Rourke late in the year because they wanted to get some looks at him. Cameron Dotson, $2 super chat. Mac Jones and a 3rd-round pick to Arizona for Walter Nolan. Those of you who have been watching this show for a long time know that I wanted the Niners to take Walter Nolan with the 9th overall, or what was it, 11th overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. And, of course, the Niners ended up drafting Mykel Williams instead. Walter Nolan got hurt prior to the year, missed the start of the season, came back, absolutely dominated. And he looked like the best defensive player on that Cardinals defense. Unfortunately, after a few games, he popped his Achilles. The Niners have already dealt with all of these injury problems, and these injury problems have not gone away. So I don't think, one, they're going to trade Mac Jones to a division rival, even though the Cardinals are very dysfunctional. Their owner stinks, and they don't have a quarterback, so they might be desperate to get a quarterback. But I don't think they're going to trade Mac Jones and a 3rd to Arizona, knowing that they're giving Arizona a quarterback who I think can be legit with the right head coach / offensive coordinator and play caller. And then you're also getting back Walter Nolan with that torn Achilles. If Walter Nolan dominated this year and he was healthy, maybe I'd think about that trade. But coming off that Achilles for a big body defensive tackle who's explosive and athletic and quick along the interior, I do worry about that. Tommy Huxley, $2 super chat. Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott are useless as a butt on an elbow. So during my perfect offseason plan, I had said, the Niners need to bulk up their pass rush this offseason, among the many needs that San Francisco has this offseason, right? And getting a better pass rush isn't just at edge rusher. It's at edge rusher, and it's at defensive tackle. I like Nick Bosa, of course, Mykel Williams, Bryce Huff as a speed option, Alfred Collins, and C.J. West. Those are 5 players along your defensive line. I don't want to see Kevin Givens on this team next year. I don't want to see a Jordan Elliott. Get better, get more athletic, get more talented, get deeper along the defensive line. And that's why Tommy Huxley had said that. And I agree. Matthew Short, $5 super chat here. Chase, I sure hope this is not the way they intended to fix the offensive line. I can't believe that Kyle Shanahan, in the lead up to that Seahawks game, really had the gall to say that Jake Brendel is one of the best centers in football. Kyle, pre-snap, he might be really good. In the film room, he might be really good. But when he's gone up against some physically menacing interior defensive linemen, he always gets exposed. And when the interior of your offensive line is getting constantly pushed into the lap of your quarterback or into the face of your running back who has nowhere to go, which was the case for Christian McCaffrey all season long, it's a problem. The Niners need to get better along the offensive line. They need to take it more seriously. They need to emphasize it more this offseason. Bye-bye Brendel and bye-bye Burford. Please get better at center and left guard. Today's 49ers Report mailbag is brought to you and made possible thanks to our friends at Prize Picks. The big game is almost here. And there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than with Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next year. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly on lineups when you play your first $5. With Prize Picks, you can find your community. With the new social feeds feature, you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tail or fade our picks with just one click. Join the millions of users and sign up for America's #1 sports picks app. 4-pick power play for Championship Sunday. We're going to go Cortland Sutton, Stephon Diggs, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown on the AFC side. NFC side, Kenneth Walker, Puka Nacua, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Matthew Short, $5 super chat. Thank you, my man. Do appreciate that. I can't wait for your draft content. Where would you go in this year's draft? I appreciate that. And as is the case with all of my coverage, whether it be in season, off season, take a lot of pride in my evaluations of NFL draft prospects, who I think fits for the 49ers. And one of the things that I love doing is scouting prospects. If I wasn't in broadcasting, I grew up wanting to, if I wasn't a sports broadcaster, be in a front office somewhere. And so I really like watching NFL draft prospects. And so with the offseason officially here, draft's coming up at the end of April, but the NFL Combine is coming up at the end of February into early March, and our draft content is really going to pick up. You don't want to miss it. That's why you hit that subscribe button, because we're going to be bringing the heat, whether it be trade buzz, free agency, draft, anything. As for where I think the Niners go, look, Trent Williams is going to be 38 in July. He has saved this Niners offensive line. I think you might need to find your Trent Williams replacement, and maybe you play that player immediately at left guard, and then once Trent Williams decides to retire, hopefully it's not this offseason, otherwise the Niners might be screwed, you slide that offensive tackle who plays left guard out to left tackle. I think that's a pretty smart play for the Niners. If you don't go offensive line in the first round, and here's a look at the top offensive tackle prospects going into the 2026 NFL draft, and obviously it's very early right now. These things are fluid and can change. Maybe the Niners go wide receiver, because that's another point of emphasis on offense. They need to get faster, more explosive on the offensive side of the ball. The 49er guy, trade for A.J. Brown. This would be a fascinating trade for so many different reasons. Would the Philadelphia Eagles, who are going to be Super Bowl contenders next year, trade their #1 wide receiver, who was an All-Pro in 3 straight years prior to this year, who went over 1,000 yards in all 4 seasons with the Eagles, trade him to the Niners, who are also going to be Super Bowl contenders, also knowing that the Niners and Eagles could play once again in the playoffs and stand in front of one another for trying to compete for a Super Bowl. The Niners and Eagles are also going to play at Levi Stadium during the 2026 regular season. So Jeremy Fowler had predicted this week that he thinks A.J. Brown gets dealt. He picked the Buffalo Bills, and a lot of NFL executives think that A.J. is going to get moved, and they felt that way as early as October. But other potential fits for AJ, according to NFL scouts, the 49ers, the Raiders, the Browns. Of course, a lot of people are going to throw out the New England Patriots because AJ is very tight with Mike Vrabel. AJ is going to be 29, a little bit older. Maybe he's lost like a quarter of a step, a half a step. But in Kyle Shanahan's scheme, his ability to be strong at the catch point, pick up yards after the catch, still run pretty well, he would be so dynamic. It would be the most talented wide receiver that Kyle Shanahan has had since Julio Jones. And some people like to say that A.J. Brown is the modern day Julio Jones because of the physical build that they have. You have A.J. Brown and Ricky Pearsall, and then you draft a wide receiver or you pick up another wide receiver in free agency. That's how you rebuild that wide receiver room overnight. Now, of course, he's going to come with a little bit of wide receiver drama. He's going to be vocal, but that's like with, I don't know, it feels like 90% of wide receivers who are always unhappy at times. But in going to a new destination, if Kyle Shanahan can scheme him open, he's had problems with that Eagles scheme. He could put up big numbers, and then that's how you keep him happy, and he'd get a lot of targets too. I just don't think the Eagles, one, want to trade him away. Two, trade him away to an NFC rival. But the Niners, according to people across the NFL, looked at as a fit for A.J. Brown. If Julio Jones can succeed under Kyle Shanahan, A.J. Brown can as well. The notorious Gav, do you really think Jed York will invest in an investigation into the practice field that could potentially cost him millions? He should. Look, the Niners organization is worth nearly $9 billion. If Jed York can invest in a soccer team that's not even in the United States, Leeds United, he should be able to invest in his football team because that's his primary investment. He has sold stakes of the organization. He is hosting Super Bowl 60, cash cow. This brand is iconic. The Niners' revenue is crazy year over year. And you should be able to invest. You should be wanting to invest because player injuries are literally impacting your multi-billion-dollar business. And if this impacts players who want to sign with the Niners in free agency, if your own players who are already on the roster are voicing concerns about their own health, and an athlete's body is everything to them, you have to do right by them. You have to do right by them. So I hope he does. And these studies are not hard. They're not hard to do. Invest in it. It's an easy yes. Hey, yo, Paulie. Hey, yo. $5 super chat. What would it take to land Justin Jefferson and or A.J. Brown? So A.J. is going to be 29. Justin Jefferson right now is 26. I think for Justin Jefferson, it would take like a first and a second. Maybe a little bit more. A first and a second, maybe Mac Jones, because the Vikings need a quarterback. For A.J. Brown, I don't think he's worth a first-round pick right now, coming off a year in which his production was the lowest it had been since, I believe, 2021, his final year with Tennessee. So I think A.J. might demand like a second and a third. But maybe the Eagles and Howie Roseman say, you really think we're going to trade A.J. to y'all? We're going to increase our asking price just because you're in the NFC. Yoshi, Chase Sr., will the Niners sign Eric Kendricks and Garrett Wallow? Without their excellent play, the Niners would have lost to the Eagles. They were so good against the Eagles. For Kendricks, I think it's going to come down to if he wants to play. This was his 10th NFL season. Before the Niners added him in November, he was still training multiple times a day for hours on end every day to get an opportunity to play. And he played well against the Eagles. Hard to gauge how he played against the Seahawks because the offense screwed over the defense because they gave Seattle so many short fields. The Seahawks scored 40-plus points, and they had one drive of more than 50 yards. Hard to play defensive football that way, and the Niners also defensively didn't play that well. I might go younger if I'm the Niners. Garrett Wallow is a player who's still somewhat young. I might add him to the team. I mean, shoot, with all the injuries that you're having, you need depth pieces right now anyway. So I'd go Wallow, and if Kendricks wants to come back as a veteran who can back up Fred Warner? Maybe, but I don't know if he wants to back up Fred Warner at this stage of his career. What is the Niners' biggest need this offseason? Look at this team, think about this team, and let me know what you're thinking right now. What are the people saying? William Roberts, AJ acts childish, so no for me. What wide receiver doesn't? Justin Jefferson went off during a couple games this year. It's always wide receivers. If you can deal with Terrell Owens, you can deal with A.J. Brown. It's not even close. No Addison from JM. I agree. Ralphie said offensive line, please. I agree. All right, we're going to sign off. Thanks to everybody who watched the show here today. Some quality Niners talk. Went live for, what was it? About an hour? Went live for about an hour here on the show. I'll be live with Larry Krueger tomorrow. I was just live with him on the radio, KNBR, in San Francisco. Always a pleasure going on the Sports Leader. But great coverage to come every single day all throughout the weekend. And we'll catch you all soon. For Chip, I'm Chase. See you later.